This episode is proudly supported by Crunch. Running a hospitality business isn't for the faint-hearted. Between ordering stock, scheduling rosters, paying bills, motivating your team, and keeping customers happy, there's a lot on your plate. It's no surprise that business planning often gets put on the back burner. Well, here's something that can help. Introducing Crunch, a new app to help simplify the business side of hospo. With Crunch, you get access to practical, bite-sized education, proven strategies, and a supportive community of hospo owners just like you. When it comes to the Crunch, if you're looking for proven ways to build a successful, sustainable business, Crunch has you covered. Try Crunch now. To get 14 days free, just head to crunchhospo.com.au.
If we start discounting, we may as well just close. We need to stop selling ourselves short. We need to be proud of what we're doing. We need to deliver our worth. We need to charge our worth, and we need to know what that worth is.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Everyone's budgets are thin, the economy is at snail's pace, and mortgage rates are through the roof. And whenever things are tight, dining out is the first thing consumers cut back on. It's definitely challenging in hospitality, but what is the grim reality for most operators right now? Damian Brabender is the owner of Otis Dining Hall in Canberra. Damian, how are you?
G'day, mate. How you going?
Good. It's good to get you back on the show. I think we had some funny yarns last time we had you on, but how are things at the moment?
Personal life things are great, but business is it's a challenge. And I used to always say, life without challenges and hurdles would be just a flat foot, boring race. But at the moment, I think we can put the hurdles aside. The Olympics is over, so let's try and get a bit of reprisal for everyone.
Well, it is spring at the moment, and that usually signals better times in hospitality pushing into summer. Is it a typical spring at the moment for you?
It's definitely not a typical spring. We've actually, and we are a little bit different in our restaurant Otis, where winter is actually our busy period because we have truffle season, and it's a lot of people, they use that as their annual big splurge type of night out. But even throughout that, we were booked out at reduced numbers. We reduced numbers and reconfigured the dining room to make sure the ambience was still good. Nothing worse than sitting in a 50% booked out restaurant. So we kind of moved the goalpost ourselves there a little bit. But we're just finding that people still weren't having that second bottle of wine and things. So turning into spring now, where we're finding people aren't having the second glass of wine. And we understand that people are doing it tight. There is some good news on the horizon, seeing internationally some other countries are tying back their interest rates slowly. But I think that we've really once again endured a series of hurdles and stresses in the industry once again, and I'm just hoping that everyone can get through it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you reconfigured the dining room for the ambience. I was going to ask you about, with less diners or them spending less, what impact does that have on the decisions you make, on the produce you make, the staffing, all those sort of things? Has it been a really tricky period?
It's absolutely it's like getting a scratchy and only scratching half the panels sometimes. That's the thing. So we went from a seating capacity of close to 70, and we've tied that down. We've actually split the dining room into a small lounge area for people just having small plates and wine, and then, or cocktails, for example. And then the 2/3 of the dining area, we've reconfigured that to be sort of a 32 to 35 seat restaurant with round tables, more room, just to encourage people to relax a little bit. One thing we're finding is that people are lovely, like they really are, and people will be out, and if they're next to another table within earshot and they know that they're going out for a special occasion and they're just having the smallest offering and they're not going to go to town and buy a bottle of wine and stuff, people will kind of follow. They don't want to be sitting next to somebody else where they're drinking champagne and other people are drinking water. So we one thing I noticed is with those social interactions that were happening, that we were better off to buy larger tables with less seats and have them further apart from each other. And we actually got lighting, just individual lamps per table. We turned the main lights down so that everyone was kind of in their own micro restaurant area themselves. And then we found that people would kind of relax a bit more and they weren't so socially conscious, and all of a sudden, oyster sales and champagne sales would go back up again. But it's not every table that does it. Just last night, for example, we had a table of 3 people. Their average spend was nearly $350 per person, and then at the table next to them, the average spend was $100 per person. So you've got to tailor to everyone, and some nights you'll get all of the quieter tables. So your staff will kind of, and staff they care as much as the owners do. That's what I'm finding with our current staff. They'll be looking at me like, oh, there's nothing to do. What do I do? It's like, well, just go and tell you some bad jokes or pour someone a free glass of wine or something. Just make people happy, because we don't want to feel like we've got a restaurant that's just doing wakes or something.
Historically, Canberra has been seen as a bit of a bubble and a bit protected compared to other major cities when there's been recessions and all sorts of things like that. Do you think those days are over? Like, how do you feel as a business owner in the capital?
I moved to Canberra because of that fact, and I never wanted to be a big business, and I'm far from a big business, as you know, but I've always wanted to be a sustainable, protected business that was, and it's funny that we're talking about recessions and things now. I always wanted a recession-proof business, because hospitality, they are the first to absolutely cop it. So Canberra, on paper, that's exactly what it used to be, in my opinion. But now that we have, without me sounding old, a different generation coming through as diners now, they've got mortgages on properties that have gone up in value by a couple of 100% in the last 10, 15 years, which is great on paper for them. But when the mortgage rates go up, all of a sudden there's no income left. So it's done the exact opposite. I mean, we've gone from a town with so many amazing fine dining, high average spend businesses that we used to have here to now only a handful, and so many are now going for that casual style of dining where customers can walk in and, they can throw a pineapple on the table and have their evening out. So it's just not really sustainable. We don't have the population to sustain that. We do need to have higher level venues, but the problem is that we are the first to get hit. People will happily go to the pub and spend $40 on a steak and drink 6 pints of Guinness and walk out of there spending $120 or whatever. They'll happily do that, but going into a restaurant knowing they're going to spend $100, that's a different story. So
yeah, it's interesting, and interesting you're saying about the new diners coming through. Well, can you take us through the kind of arc of like the diners sort of since you've had Otis? Obviously, there was before COVID, there was during and after COVID, and sort of what we have now. Have diners changed dramatically during all of those periods of time?
I could take our diner demographic and, well, I'm saying I have looked at our demographic and created spreadsheets and tables and everything, and you can almost group people into different styles of diners, different styles of customer. We'll have some who will dine, for example, a weekday. You would expect that to be a lower average spend. For us, it's a higher average spend because it's a more mature, aged crowd who will look at a bottle of wine that might be $500 that other people would look at and go, I'm never going to buy a $500 bottle of wine in my life. But you'll have people that are coming in celebrating a 60th birthday, and they'll go, yeah, we'll have one of those, and we'll have one of those. And so it is a different demographic and different crowd, which, that's horses for courses, and it has to happen. But you'll have your younger generation who really bring the atmosphere to a restaurant, and they really keep you on your toes with always changing what you're doing and developing. So I kind of look at, your mature, high-spending customers, they're fantastic, absolutely pivotal for a business, but it's still your younger diners who are very vocal about what they like, and maybe they're coming in and they're drinking the non-alcoholic beers and they're having the mocktails and stuff, so their spend is lower, but they're really putting you to the test to make sure that what you're doing is relevant. I hate that term, but make sure what you're doing is relevant for them as well. So I think it's great. It's kind of increasing the heartbeat of hospitality and reminding us that, the passion that we show on the plate and in the dining room 20 years ago is very different to what it is now as well. So we kind of, without trying to be all things to all people, we do need to keep all people in mind all the time.
It's been fascinating seeing the culinary evolution of Canberra, and the other capitals have taken note, and people now travel to Canberra for the dining scene. With that, though, there's been interest, obviously, with groups moving into Canberra as well. What sort of impact has sort of bigger groups moving into this market had on smaller operators like yourself?
I think that it's always going to happen. Canberra, to quote a well-known restaurateur who put it in such a horrific way at the worst possible timing, Canberra was right for the plucking, as that person said, which I found really quite disrespectful considering the struggles people were going through. It's great to see the growth that the hospitality industry is having, but it's very important to remember that just because somebody puts their name on a restaurant, it doesn't mean they own that restaurant. And matter of fact, most of the time they're just a consultant for that restaurant. B, it doesn't mean they're in the kitchen and cooking the food. As a matter of fact, it means they're most definitely not. And C, a lot of younger staff are going to run to that glitz and glamour of working for a person who might have some cookbooks or has been on television, and all of a sudden they find themselves kind of abandoned. They're not being trained and taught properly by passionate restaurants that are owned and operated by the people that are there behind the stoves. All of a sudden they're not learning how to be a chef. They're learning how to work in one business model. It's almost like restaurants run the risk of becoming fast food. The thing with customers is that people in Canberra love to compare ourselves to Sydney and Melbourne, which is normal. It's the normal thing that people like to do, and we live in the world of social media, so we're seeing what people in Melbourne and Sydney are doing, and we want to kind of emulate that lifestyle as well, without the beach and without the traffic. So people go, oh, okay, this restaurant's coming here. I'm going to cancel my reservation at the local restaurant I normally go to, and I'm going to go and check this one out. So just yesterday, we had 2 people ring the restaurant and cancel their bookings for the start of November that they had booked in advance because another restaurant's doing a 2-day pop-up, and they've been to that restaurant in Melbourne once and they really liked it. And I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. No worries at all. Have a great time. But I'm sitting there thinking, I understand that there is hype and things that are new and shiny, but there's something a lot more important about consistency and supporting the people that are supporting you. And that's something that people really do need to keep in mind as well. I mean, if you look at just my restaurant, we've paid over $4 million in wages since we opened. Now, when you look at that, it gives me anxiety when I think about it. But over 8 years, you average, say, $10,000 a week in wages. That's over $4 million that's gone to local people, whether that's people that are getting through university, people that are working full-time hospitality. That's a lot of money. And then you look at the money that goes onto your food costs, which is about the same as well. And then that goes to local suppliers. And that's just one restaurant. And you look at all of that. Now, if you pick that up, times it by 10, like a large restaurant group coming from Sydney or Melbourne would do, and then take that money and remove it, that's going to make a big impact. That's going to make a huge impact. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful not to fall into the glitz and glamour of things being new and shiny, being better.
What sort of toll has this period of time taken on you personally and your thoughts of hospitality and sort of what you want to get out of it?
one of them people, as I mentioned before, who kind of really just focuses on the challenge ahead, and I like to overcome challenges. I mean, like you and I, we've been talking hospitality now for nearly 10 years, just to make us both feel old again. It's
Thank you.
it's well, while you're also asking, my knees both hurt a lot these days when it's cold. So, we see the challenges, want to overcome them, and there's a pride in that, and there's kind of that, it's that battle against what's good and bad. You want to make sure that what you're doing is supporting other people and making sure that what you're doing is leaving hospitality in a positive way, that people are respected and looked after, and they're giving respect, and they also look after in return as well. So when I'm looking at the global things that are affecting the hospitality industry, that is upsetting, and they are challenges. But I always say to my staff, if we're quiet tonight and we can see that we are, please don't think it's because you've cooked something badly last week, or don't think it's because you've given someone bad service. It's because people can't afford to do it, and if they could, they'd be here every single day. Our last 100 reviews we've had on Google, 99 of them are 5-star glowing reviews. So it's not that we're falling short on what we have to deliver. It's just that there aren't enough people that we can deliver it to at the moment. And I feel like that's going to change. The most disheartening thing about what's happening is not the external factors. It's actually the hospitality's internal factors, the things that are coming out of, a certain restaurant group or two certain restaurant groups in Sydney, and that type of behaviours. And I know a couple of people that have been affected by that personally. And I often cast my mind to that type of situation and compare it to the situation of the finances of the businesses and things like that. And I often think to myself, well, I'd rather be in the situation of pushing shit uphill than be in the situation of being treated like the shit getting pushed down the hill. So it's really important that we make sure that as leaders and owners and mentors, that we don't allow these external stresses of a post-COVID financial world and things to really affect the way that we are towards our staff and customers and towards our responsibility. Because once we do that, then our staff are going to start misbehaving in ways that, without making them sound like children, obviously, start acting in ways and taking different roles in their social circles that they really shouldn't be, if that makes sense, without saying the bad words.
You've been very good at dealing with what's directly in front of you and just focusing on that at that period of time. But what sort of advice would you have for operators out there that are really feeling the pinch? What's some things that they can do to try and sort of just get through this period?
Best thing would be not to ask me for advice. That's for sure. I don't think that I'm the. I don't think that maybe after 3 Guinnesses I can give some advice. But no, the best advice really, and it's something that I'm focusing on now, and it's advice that I've been given recently. It's don't look at the numbers too much. If you need to, as an owner, if you need to go a period without getting paid, well, that's par for the course. That's just what happens, and that's the reality behind the romance of owning a restaurant. What's more important is, when it is quiet, not falling into the trap that I used to always fall into, going, I am so busy because it's not busy, because now I do everything. It's to actually go, all right, well, you know what? I'm not going to go in the restaurant until 3 o'clock today. I'm not going to go in there at 9 o'clock in the morning, knowing there's nothing to do, walk around in circles, pulling the last of my hair out about a situation that can't be changed. You may as well go outside and yell at Canberra for being cold, you know what I mean? It's not going to change anything. The best way to change it is to actually spend some time doing things you wouldn't normally have time doing outside of your responsibilities. Take the dog for a longer walk, go to a cafe you haven't been to, and read a newspaper that's not on your phone for a change. To get back to doing things that you would do before you overburden yourself with those passion-filled, responsibilities, and just try and reset. I know it's a shit time to reset, but when else are you going to do it? I remember when COVID was kind of wrapping up, and I had busted my ass all the way through COVID. We had a fire in the restaurant. We did our Otis at Home packs. We were doing fundraisers and collaborations with other restaurants, mentoring other people, all these things. I filled my plate like the first guy at the buffet. And I got to the end of COVID and I kind of went, all right, we're open again now, but I'm fucked. I'm knackered. I've been doing 100 hours a week here. And I just, I thought that it was kind of relevant to mention that, there's no point burning yourself out when there's no wood on the fire, So take the time, just go, it is what it is. Go and do a short course or something, go and, watch a movie that you've been planning to watch for 5 years, you've never seemed to have time to do. Just remove yourself from the situation a little bit.
Is there any sort of external things that could help at the moment, do you think, with restaurants?
Oh, there's a million different things that can help, and the unfortunate truth at the moment is that we are at an election cycle, and we are going to be promised a lot of things from every single side of politics, and we all know that 10% of it will come true and 90% won't. So at the moment, there's the appetite for helping hospitality isn't there. The appetite for making promises to help hospitality is definitely there. So we need to be very, very careful about what we're taking to the bank now and what we're thinking is going to happen. External factors outside of hospitality, and one of them is not a positive one, it's actually a negative one that people should be wary of. It's the apps and these groups and things that are popping out of nowhere with these join up and pay us X amount per month, and we will tell people that your food's half price on this day of the week. If we start discounting, we may as well just close. That's the whole thing. Hospitality needs to stop falling into this coupon mentality or this happy hour mentality, if we get people in, if they get their first thing half price, then they'll buy more. People on average are buying less per capita. So if you give them half price, all you're going to do is lose money. And once everything turns around again, you're going to be known as the place that's cheap. We need to stop selling ourselves short. We need to be proud of what we're doing. We need to deliver our worth. We need to charge our worth. And we need to know what that worth is. We need to not be dictated by other people to say, oh, if you want more customers, have you thought about giving away free things? Like, you don't need to be a fucking genius to know that. I could fill the MCG with free food, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to make money, am I? So we need to make sure that we're not going to discount ourselves, because once you do, it's a very slippery slope at the moment, and that race to the bottom is going to be a pretty hard one to call if we all start doing it.
Otis Dining Hall's quite a unique venue for Canberra, and it feels like such an institution. And I'm showing my age again. I remember way back in the day when I used to wear a bib for a living, reviewing it. I can't even remember what year that was, but
2016.
Was that?
It was September 2016. You were wearing a denim jacket with patches on it, and you were at the bar, and you had John Dory.
Wow.
I've just got a strange memory, right? It's weird, yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing memory. But take us back to that time. You created this amazing restaurant. What did it take to sort of open it up, and how did it make you feel when you got those doors open? We
could have opened a couple of months earlier than we did, but I kind of got stage fright a little bit, to be honest, because it's funny how much confidence as a chef owner you have to have when you're opening a venue. But once you have too many people's input, you start questioning what you were already thinking. And the fact that I was getting a lot of input from people that weren't in the industry necessarily, but were experts in different parts of things attached to the industry, I was taking everything that they were saying very, very seriously, which you should pay respect to people's professions and what they're good at. But I ended up getting to a stage where we opened our first 2 nights, and it was friends and family and some other people, and I remember just looking at what we had done, and I actually, instead of feeling proud, I just went, this is fucking shit. So we closed for 2 days and we reopened with something that was totally, totally different. And what it was something that I kind of went back in time in my mind and went, what did I think was a cool restaurant before I become someone who worked in hospitality? Like when I was 14, 15 years old, before I'd been to a restaurant, what did I picture as being a cool restaurant? And it was kind of that 1960s style dining where, where you see the chef who's talking to people, where everyone's having a good time, where things are polished, but they're not too polished. And, that the food had to be simple, but simply great. So that's why we have our pepper steak, and it's never left the menu, in our creme caramel and some other dishes like that. So I wanted it to be almost cartoon-esque in a way, and kind of that comic book style fancy restaurant that you might see as a Chicago steakhouse almost. But I didn't want it to be deconstructed and reimagined food. I didn't want it to be something that I had to keep on being inventive to keep on doing what I was doing. I'd rather perfect something and do the same thing a million times instead of doing a million things one time each.
Well, that nostalgic approach is something that I remember from all those years ago, and it's become a real trademark of yours. What's it like creating new dishes and going back and recreating sort of older dishes and that sort of thing in such a beautiful setting like that? Is there challenges?
There's definitely challenges because, as we mentioned earlier in the chat, that we have different genres of customers. Some will come in and say, "Oh, I've had steak au poivre pommes frites in Paris 40 years ago," and for them it is truly nostalgic and amazing. But you can't use classic dishes to be nostalgic for the other genre of customers. So I always like to take a slightly different route of reinterpreting something that would be nostalgic for someone in their 30s or in their 20s. So, for example, at the moment, we're doing a chocolate Bavarian dessert, and 9 out of 10 people will go, "Oh, I like the Sara Lee ones." And that's the exact idea. And even way back 8 years ago, the dessert you had, I think, was the Neapolitan ice cream, where we would juice, 20 kilos of strawberries just to make strawberry ice cream, and it would just be the best strawberry ice cream and the best vanilla bean ice cream and the best chocolate ice cream. But people would look at it and go, "Yeah, it's just Neapolitan ice cream." And you go, "Yeah, but it's really good." And now you see people lining up at Messina and you go, "Yeah, people will always love good ice cream." So and it is nostalgic. But when it comes to the challenges of recreating dishes or recreating menus, it's always finding the balance of knowing that the visual marketing is so important. My favourite dish on the menu at the moment is our gnocchi done with foie gras sauce supreme, which looks like gnocchi in a beige sauce. And it looks very, very simple, but you eat it and it's amazingly, complex. So you put that on Instagram and you start getting comments going, "What's this?" And you go, "Well, maybe I shouldn't be marketing something like that visually," you know what I mean? So I think that kind of style of communication, which is now more important than any other when it comes to marketing, I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
How do you feel about the restaurant now that you've created? You mentioned about how you changed it very, very early on after 2 days trialing. What's your sense of the restaurant and moving forward at the moment?
I absolutely love the restaurant. The restaurant it's a part of the fabric of me as a person, as weird as that sounds. It's always changing. It's at the moment, I think it's the best shape it's ever been in. Obviously, it's not the busiest. Like we used to do sort of, over 100 people on a Saturday night, once upon a time before COVID, and now we're doing, 40 people. But it's a very different style. It's a bit slower. It's a bit, well, I guess it is kind of an extension of me. Over the last 8 years, it's gotten slower. It's gotten a bit quieter. So it's really, I don't know, it's matured, and I think it's sitting in a really good spot for an experience for people as well. We're not doing something that's going to blow people's minds. We're doing things that are going to help people remember what good food is, And good food starts, with the produce. It doesn't start with the chef. And good service starts, with the wait staff. It doesn't end with the wine. So it's that full circle, that chain mentality that everything is connected. And right now, I think the restaurant is firing on all cylinders when it comes to producing a really elevated dining experience, and it's something that we're particularly proud of. We've got an amazing group of staff at the moment, which is always been a challenge to kind of get. We'd get a good kitchen team, but then we wouldn't have a great front of house team, or it would be vice versa, or we'd have too many people that would, too many personalities and things. But at the moment, we've got just such a great team of people that all care, all on the same page. We had a staff member literally come in yesterday with some flowers because, they had 2 shifts cancelled because we weren't too busy. And they came with some flowers just to tell us that everything's going to be okay. So it's a very great team, and it's a very great place to be at the moment, even though it's not the busiest it's ever been. We're very proud of where we are as a team.
You mentioned that things are looking positive and hopefully there's going to be a bit of change. How do you see things, and do you think things are going to get better over the next 6 months, a year?
I think things are going to get a lot better in the next 12 months. I think things are going to get exceptionally better in the next 3 years. I think a lot of people have been fighting internally with their own budgets, but also their own outlook on the world, and kind of trying to, grit their teeth and say, no, I'm not going to pay more money for things. But I think people are now understanding that Australia's always been a cheap place to live when you compare it to other countries as well. When a global financial recession is on the horizon, or has been, spoken about, that we start to look further and realise that, you go to New York and have dinner in a top restaurant, for 2 people, you're not getting out of there for under $1,200. And there's no question about that. And you don't have to go crazy with your wine or anything for that to happen. And then you come back to Australia and you go, wow, I can eat in the best restaurants in Australia for half that price. That's kind of insane when you think about it. So I think people are starting to see the real value in what hospitality is. And I think that the bargain hunting phase is stopping. I think that people are now going, okay, I will go out less, but I'll go out for a higher quality meal. So I think that we are going to change gears a little bit in the industry, but I think we're going to have a higher average spend per customer. I think that's going to help alleviate wage costing in restaurants as well. I think with the change of interest rates that we're looking at, four decreases in interest rates in the next 12 months, apparently, whether or not that's true or whether it's just conversations people are having. But if that happens, I think we won't see the immediate effect like we want to, but we will see some effect. The main effect will happen after the 12-month period, because people have dipped into their savings, and people will want to not just replace their savings, people will want to probably add 50% into their savings now, because they don't want to go through what we just went through. Christmas is going to be a really tricky time for a lot of people this year. I'm hoping that we hear some positive news about interest rates before then, so that people don't have to, sacrifice something that they look forward to all year round. It'll be interesting to see how that happens, but I do think that the future is going to be very positive, and we have lost a lot of restaurants and a lot of bars and a lot of cafes, and we are going to lose more. But I think what's going to be left is going to be, the majority of them is going to be a testament of people's real passion and the fact that they were willing to jump over those hurdles that we mentioned before, and they're going to be the fittest to lead us, moving forward.
Well, mate, as ever, it's always an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. Good luck with the rest of the year and beyond. Please keep in touch, and let's catch up again soon.
Absolutely.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.